actually in my first tutorial, I just kind of talked about getting cycles set up. Click down in the drop menu, cycles. If you don't have that, user preferences, let that load up. User preferences, add-ons, render, cycles, make sure that's checked. Alright, save as default, but that's not going to do anything for me. So, in the other tutorial, in the second tutorial that I made that I couldn't really get up and running, I just talked a little bit about your hardware. I try to do everything almost exclusively in cycles. I may change things a little bit. I may use Blender Render for a couple things, but I doubt I'll use it too often. I just like cycles. It's fun, it's easy, and it works. So, really the main point is, if your desktop is old like mine and it lags, especially with background software running, that's not good. It's not good at all. Trust me, it sucks and it takes forever to render even in cycles. Essentially by default when you use a CPU, cycles is a little bit faster. But you can use your GPU too. It's a new thing. Generally it works best with NVIDIA GPUs, not because they're better, it's just because CUDA support. I don't know, I guess it's easier to manage, but at any rate, I guess I should move on with the tutorial. Oh, and also for those of you who have a low-end system, if you've got at least one PCI Express port, I would recommend getting one of the new NVIDIA video cards, like the GT 610 or 620. They're like $75, and they've got a decent amount of CUDA cores. They will run a lot faster than my computer, trust me. And another thing that I also said a little bit is, generally when I'll make a tutorial, I'll try and keep it short. I could sit at a computer for 3 or 4 hours, but I'm going to try and keep it short, especially since it's for beginners. I mean, you just got to kind of learn. And if you ever want more info that I really can't give you, I would highly suggest checking out blenderguru.com. Almost everything I've learned in Blender, I've learned from Blender Guru. Maybe like 1 or 2 tutorials from other sites, but almost all of it I learned from Blender Guru. And Andrew Price's tutorials are great. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So really, I'm just going to kind of show you cycles a little bit, I guess, and just talk about it. So in the cycles render, I think you can also get a little bit of a description of it from Blender Guru too, but in the cycles render, they generally just do things differently. Like, for example, alright, I'm going to keep the default scene, by the way. I've got my camera. Alright, lamp. Okay, so I'm going to go back to Blender Render and just sort of show you how it works. F12. Alright, see, you've got your tiles loading up. It's Blender Render. Takes a little bit, but in cycles render, it's completely different. It actually uses a different kind of rendering tool. In fact, cycles render, hold on, I gotta change something real quick. I don't like using tiles. Yeah, that's what it is. I like keeping it to one tile. I think it's kind of dumb to have tiles and cycles, but generally, I don't change too much of these unless sorry about the random pause. I had a little bit of a glitch. Anyways, I generally don't change these too much. I might go to sampling and turn the preview down to 0 and render to whatever I actually feel like rendering. I don't know, we'll just go with that. Actually, I'll just leave it at the default 10. Alright, so you render it. Path tracing. You'll see the samples up there. It's a little bit blurry, as you can see, but it has the entire image up at once. That's because cycles will render one image and then get it progressively more and more high def, I guess. It's less noisy, I think is the word I'm looking for. That's pretty much all I can explain to you. It also has to do with the lighting. It uses ray tracing, which is a different kind of lighting. Really more complicated stuff would be along the road, so I'm not going to explain too much about the actual lighting, and like I said, my computer's running a little bit slower. But with that, also in Blender Render, I'm going to go back to 3D view here. within Blender, in addition, it's like my default cube. Your materials were also a little bit different. This really won't look familiar to you at all, so don't worry about this too much. But going to cycles, you actually use nodes. So I'm going to, in the center, if you left click, you can move all the windows up and down to that. I find that helpful with the windows a lot. And you can also left click split area like that if you wanted, or if I wanted to join it, well, I can't because it's like split in half, so I'd have to join those two and then join that. But anyways, so I've got this. I'm going to go to my node editor. This is generally how materials, are set up. So I'm just going to make it green. We'll go with that, just because. So now normally, if you're doing some kind of test render in Blender, you just turn down, pretty much all your settings, so it's a test render, just that. F12, whatever, initializing, doing its whole path tracing of the samples. Alright, but you're not limited to that anymore. In fact, you can click down here and these show you different views. Bounding box, wireframe, solid, texture. They look the same because I don't have a texture. Or material, that's the color there. Or render, and it will path trace your sample. You can move around. You can pretty much do everything you could before in this. It's just eats your CPU a little bit more, so things will go a little bit slower if you're trying to work in. And that's really just a basic, very, very basic explanation of cycles, more or less how it works. So, with that being said, I'm going to find the lamp. I'm going to delete the lamp because we don't use lamps anymore. I mean, you could, but I like using nodes. I also like turning the background color all the way to black. Under world settings, you really don't need to mess with anything else. Alright. Now, going to add a plane. By the way, I pressed Shift A. If you wanted, you could go to Object. No, sorry. I usually use keyboard shortcuts, but you can go to Add, Mesh, Plane, or you can just type, I believe. Dang, I don't remember how to do the typing. Yeah, you see, generally if I don't use it, I'm not going to know how to do it too much. I mean, you can add cube maybe if that wants to work. No, that doesn't do anything. Okay, yeah, just checking. That's a search bar. I don't even remember what I'm doing too much. Yeah. So you've got all your various settings, and this is a sort of learn as you go tutorial, so I'm not going to really explain every single little bit as you use it, or the first time you use it, I'll probably, explain it what it does. So, I don't know. Anyways, at this, I don't know why, I just hate it being under. It's, either got to be under or over. I don't like it being in the middle. So I'm going to press G, Z, and then I'm going to use my arrow keys to move up. You can, use your mouse. I just find the arrow keys are more accurate when I'm trying to get into smaller spaces, especially if I slip or something. And if you find that you hit grab and you accidentally, move it in a direction you don't want, you can hit Control Z to undo. Or if you grab it and you didn't mean to grab it, you just hit left or right click, right click, and you deselect it. Alright, so I've got that. Generally, I probably won't get into too much messing with those, just adding them. So Shift A, Mesh, Plane. I like going to this and making sure it's at 0, 0, 0. It likes to put stuff to the cursor, wherever the cursor is. I don't like it being in random location, so if you hit that and you find you can't see it, just go to the box, which is your object. Make sure you have that selected. It's just called plane. I put it at 0, 0, 0, and now you can see it's under there. I'm going to just call this floor. When you have a big scene, it helps naming your object instead of just having plane.1, plane.2. Alright, now I'm going to hit S and just scale this out. Give this a new material. You can also name your materials, but at the same time, I also don't like doing that. Alright, so there's two ways to edit your materials. You can do it through here. If you've ever used Blender before, you'll probably be more familiar with this. If not, you can do nodes. Generally, I'll use a mix of both. A lot of times I'll use the node editor. Sometimes I'll use this. This is helpful when choosing shaders like whatever, glossy, transparent, velvet, emission, etc. Alright, going back to diffuse here for a second. Now, you can also use the node editor, but that's a little bit more advanced because you can add in also different nodes. Like I could add in a mix node that would mix the colors together of whatever I put in. So I'm going to select this, actually grab it and delete it. We're going to Shift A, oops, Shift A, shader. Let's go with glossy shader. Just move around until you can see it. Just click it and move it. Now I'm going to connect it to surface. You really won't see any changes when you're in solid view, and even if you're in textured or material, you still won't see many changes, just because it's just the way things are. See, it obviously doesn't look glossy, but so over here on your material output, you've got three things. You've got surface, volume, and displacement. I'll generally probably almost always use surface, maybe displacement when we're doing things like bump mapping, but that's for later. Like I said, I like to keep things short, so I might just end it here with a simple render. So the only other thing we need to do is, well, name our material glossy. Now when you're adding lights in cycles, it's different than Blender because you don't actually go down and choose lamp. You're actually going to choose another plane or whatever object you'd like to emit. I'm just going to choose plane just because it's easy. Throws it over there. I don't know why it throws it over there. And if your material view and it doesn't have a material, it's going to show up as black. So don't be alarmed or anything. It just really won't show up during render when you do that. Alright, so 0, 0, 0. Alright, now I'm going to actually grab this on the y-axis, like so. Also, the main reason is I'm using my keyboard is because I have to hold the microphone. I've got a little bit of a messy setup right now, but things will get better at any rate. Alright, grab Z. I'm going to use the mouse this time, and rotate X. Oh no, that's grab. So, like I said, right click puts you back to where you are now. Rotate or R, then hit X. Just kind of get it to be facing that, I guess. Alright, that'll do. Let's call this, my mouse just fell, light. Alright, go to materials, new, name it light. And I know you're seeing my computer, dang it, I know you're seeing my computer runs a little bit laggy at times. It generally runs a lot faster. Blender doesn't eat your CPU unless you have like 10,000 or 100,000 or even a million vertices, which, believe it or not, can be pretty easy to achieve. Alright, at any rate, gonna turn this to emission. There you go. Now you have a basic setup, so I'm gonna go to rendered, path tracing, and you can see, actually you really can't see, and that's because there's barely any light coming out. So if you adjust the strength value to say 5, give it a minute because it has to re-render here. Obviously it gets brighter now. Still not bright enough, so grab. Let's do 15. See how that works out. Alright, so you can see a little bit more. If you want, you actually in the middle of while you're rendering, you can grab. It'll just take a little bit to respond. Grab Y. Alright, and maybe I'll make it a little bit bigger too and hit S to scale. Make it a little bit bigger. There you go. And now you can see the material. So the diffuse essentially just sets a basic color. You can't really tell